So the weather in Fortaleza, it's right next to the equator, so it's also very dry there. And there's a dry season and a wet season. So the dry season will be really hot, usually 90 degrees every day. And then there will be the wet season, in which case it will rain, and sometimes for 3 or 4 days at a time, and the streets will flood and everything. And people treat that as sort of their winter. They'll call it winter, even though it only drops like 5 to 10 degrees, and people get colds and everything because they're not used to the change in temperature. It's a very tropical climate, so clothes, definitely bring an umbrella, and but yeah, it's a great climate. It'll be hot because there's usually not any air conditioning. I know none of the missionaries have air conditioning, and very few people that live there will have air conditioning. You only see that in houses, or not houses, but in banks. So housing is a lot different than the houses here. It's a little bit difficult to describe. They build their houses out of a hollow cinder block type brick, versus the wood that we build our houses with. And it's hard to describe. The housing is very different, though. I can't. You have to see it to really see the difference. The houses are definitely a lot smaller, and usually families will. There will be sometimes. There usually is very common to have extended family living with families. So grandparents or cousins, very commonly live with their other people. There's a very large income inequality in Fortaleza. So there's both favelas there, which are total slums, are very, very small homes, sometimes made with scrap wood and stuff like that, and sometimes they're a little bit nicer as well. And there's also people who live in high-rise skyscrapers, and it'll be very, very nice houses. And so along with that, what people do for work is very diverse. A lot of people will be day laborers, and there'll be some people that work at banks or work for different businesses. I know one of the wealthy members of the church there owns his own funeral home, and it's actually really popular there. And so it's very diverse what people do for work there. Okay. So transportation, I know for us missionaries, if we had to go somewhere further than we could walk, it was usually always the bus. The city bus is an experience. It's usually very, 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 very crowded. They'll put literally 80 people in the bus. And so not only is it standing room only, but it's, you'll be touched on all 4 corners of your body, be very close to everybody. And that's usually how you get around the city. In the interior, the buses aren't usually that crowded. There's usually a lot of traffic in the center of the city. I think that's like normal cities. Some of the members will have cars, depending on which area you serve in. I know I had one area where I think only 3 members in the ward had cars, and then another area where maybe half the members had cars. That was a much more wealthy area, so it just really depends on the area. But definitely most people in the city of Fortaleza and in the mission don't have cars, and they usually use bike or bus transport. But as far as for tourists, I hear the beaches are really nice. So I do plan to go back, and it'd be nice to go visit the beaches along with people I served. So I'm looking forward to that. There's a Burger King right next to the mission office. Great. It's awesome. It's awesome to have some American food occasionally. Burger King is really, it's a really, it's a fast food restaurant. It's not very chic or anything like that. But Burger King is considered a very nice restaurant. And the burgers are usually about twice the price as they are here. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, beware of people on bikes. So people on bikes seem to be more likely to assault you. Don't carry anything that looks valuable, and try to blend in. I think you'll be fine. And missionaries get assaulted a lot more than the normal people there. But and don't ever take your cell phone out in public. So just obey the Spirit. There's definitely certain things you'd be warned about not to do.
I mean, it's different culture, different people. You're used to different things. Something that I noticed is that Brazilians, we're loud. We like to party. We always have excuses to have a party, and we're very open. Honest about our feelings, and so if you say something that is not really nice, you get mad for a little bit, and then you're fine. And I've noticed that at least with like companions and just people in general, Americans are more reserved and more, they keep things to themselves. And so, like it's harder for them to share their feelings or share what they're thinking, unless you're like really dig in or unless they really trust you. But Brazilians, you just tell everybody what's happening with your life and everybody knows. And Americans are not, like nobody really knows what's going on with them. And then I think because people are so open to just talk about anything in Brazil, it's easier for you to talk about anything. Like you can talk about politics, you can talk about gospel, God, whatever you want to talk about, it's easy. And then in America, sometimes as a missionary, I would ask people, like, oh, do you believe in God? And people would get so offended. Like I've asked them something so personal, and I was like, I'm just asking if you believe in God. If you don't, like, just say no. Like, it's fine. But that was, like, really hard for me. Like, oh, my gosh, like, I offended you because I asked you that? So it was, like, an adjustment, just, like, okay, maybe I can't say those things. Like, maybe I have to be, like, more American and not like, say too much or be too much. So that's something that I noticed. And then Brazilians love to cook. We love to eat. We always say, just put more water in the beans and you can invite more people, saying, it doesn't matter, like we can always have one more person over. And I felt like on my mission, a lot of people would feed us breakfast for dinner, and I would be so hungry because they didn't make a lot of food. And so that was funny because, in Brazil, there's always like tons of food, and they fed us really good food, but sometimes it was very small portions. Not complaining, I'm grateful for it, but I gained 20 pounds, so they fed me. It's not like I was hungry. But it was just like different to see, how missions or how people are in different places. Also, I would say that Americans are very, like the guys are very gentlemen, like they'll open the door for you. They will pay for your meal. Like in Brazil, nobody pays for your meal. Like even if you're like married, like you just pay for yourself. Like you don't share anything. So it's kind of like just different, that part. And I really like how, they are here. I think that's really nice that they will treat you really well. But in Brazil, like it's easy. It's like kind of normal for you. If you're eating something, somebody would just like, oh, can I try some? And then you just like share your food with everybody and you eat from the same fork. Not with like everyone, but just with your families and stuff. And so sometimes my sisters will do that too. If I'm like dating somebody or anything, they'll be like, can I have a piece of your sandwich? So it's kind of funny because they're like, sure. But it's just, I don't know, you get used to it. But the food, the fruit in Brazil is so good. That's something I miss every day, because I think it's because it's a tropical place, so the fruit has a better taste. I always tell people that bananas don't taste like bananas to me here, and I've heard that we have like about 90 fruits that like America doesn't have, and so those fruits are really yummy, and it's sad that Heavenly Father didn't make them in America as well. But we have some places here that they make some foods, Brazilian places, but it's not the same. But I miss, some people make fun of me still because of my English, like some things that I will say. So that sometimes is kind of hard. Not really, but some days you just like don't want people to make fun of you anymore. So I kind of miss speaking my own language and not have people tell me that I'm saying something wrong or that what I said doesn't make sense. So I don't know. I think it's because I used to be very prideful because I was so good with Portuguese. So it was like a learning and humbling experience for me to learn another language and just to have people correct me all the time, because I used to be the one correcting the missionaries in Brazil and just saying, no, you're saying like wrong things in Portuguese. So I would be like a brat to them. So it's good because people in America are a lot nicer than I was to them, and they help me speak correctly. So it's kind of fun. I love being surrounded by members of the church, because in Brazil, where I grew up, in my high school, me and my sister, we were the only members of the church. And so that was very hard, because people would ask us like, oh, that's an American church. And we had, no, this is like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It was restored in America, but it's not an American church, it's the Church of Christ. And so it was sometimes kind of hard because people would make fun of the American church that we belong to. But I think Americans are so blessed to have so many historical, like historical places to go visit, like in Brazil, there's really nothing. But here, you can go to Missouri, you can go to Utah, you can go to New York, to Palmyra, so there's like so many good things that you can do here. Like you don't only have to base your testimony in things that you've heard, you can actually go to the place and feel the Spirit and know that place like was where Joseph Smith sought God, and just different things in general. So I think that's one of the biggest difference. I would say that people here have so many resources and so many opportunities to learn more about the gospel. We have the Family History Center in Salt Lake, and it's huge. You can find so many files and do so many things, and even like the temple. Like I would drive 3 hours to get to the closest temple. And here you have, I live by the Provo City Temple. It's like 2 streets up, and I'm at the temple. And so it's just really cool that you have so many opportunities to stay close to the Spirit, and you're surrounded by members of the church, so they know your beliefs. They can help you when you're struggling. They won't make fun of you for what you believe. And so I hear a lot of people saying that, they don't like Utah because of the members or whatever, but I feel like I'm so blessed to be surrounded by members, because I know how hard it is to have bad influences around you. Not that not being a member is a bad influence, but just having people that have different lifestyles and it's not the same as you. And so that's very hard, because sometimes you feel weak, and if you don't have those good people with values and beliefs, good beliefs, it's easy for you to go downhill pretty fast. So I'm grateful to be surrounded by members of the church, because they help me. I think it's cool too that like people, so one of the biggest difference too about America and Brazil is that here people actually go to school. Because in Brazil, it's very expensive to go to college. And so that's why, the people that are poor, they can never really get out of that poor zone, because they don't have opportunities. And so the rich people, they can afford going to school, so they go to school and they have a career and they get more money. And here in America, you have student loans, you have, cheaper scholarships and cheaper colleges, and even, the church program, the Pathway program. And so you have like so many opportunities to help you to get a degree in education. And I think that's what makes America great, is because people want to learn and they want to be better and they want to have better lives. And they can, because they have the resources and the opportunities to do so. So I think that Americans are blessed to go to school and have those opportunities.
São Paulo is busy. It is the 3rd largest city on earth, and it is the most diverse city on earth. So you will meet so many interesting people. People say sometimes that race ceases to exist in your mind, because everyone you meet is there's no single race that dominates in São Paulo. It is all strung together. So it's like the world in one really tiny area. It is super busy all the time. It's always congested. The busing situation is crazy, and the train situation is crazy. There's so many people all the time, but it's fun. You're just always surrounded by people. São Paulo, it's kind of interesting where wealth is just kind of strung in with poverty. And so you can take a bus and you'll go through a really rich area, and then you'll go through a destitute poverty. The city is laid out there's something that are called favelas, which is where a lot of the lower income people live, and these are just these massive neighborhoods that are built with really cheap materials, and they'll just build house upon house upon house upon house, almost if it was like Legos. And you can go to a gate and you'll knock, well, you'll clap because they don't have doors, and they have gates, and you'll clap and they'll let you into this little house, and there are actually 4 or 5 houses in there, and so you'll enter what you think was one house, but there are actually 5 families that live there, and so that's how you can meet a ton of people. You'll walk a lot. Busing is actually kind of expensive, and so missionaries are usually on their feet. You get pretty good at walking. The climate, Brazil is really hot. São Paulo is better. It's more moderate. It's towards the south and it's by the coast, so it's more moderate. But in the summer, it will get up to 100 degrees with a lot of humidity, and you will just be really hot all the time. In the winter, it does get cold. Bring a sweater, bring 2 sweaters and maybe a jacket, because the houses don't have insulation, and so the temperature that is outside, a lot of times it's the temperature inside, and so you're gonna want to keep yourself warm. It rains a lot, and missionaries take rain. We work in the rain. We don't stop for that. So bring an umbrella. Well, you can probably buy an umbrella. You'll end up buying a lot of umbrellas. Bring a good raincoat. Make sure you have good socks. Socks are important because Brazil doesn't have really good socks, and if those get wet, it's really bad. So the climate in the summer, it does this thing where in the morning it's really, really hot. It's 9 a.m. and it's already like 89 degrees, and then in the afternoon it's just this pouring rain, season. And then towards the evening it gets actually really nice. And then in the winter, it's just it's got this cold, humid breeze that comes through. So that's why you're going to want to have your sweater. But it's always good working environment. The climate is good because there are never situations where you can't go work outside. It's a tropical climate. It's a paradise. Well, the missionaries can tell you about the dogs. There are a ton of wild dogs. There's no animal control, so you can run into a lot of stray dogs on the street. The dogs are really apt to city life, and so they know how to get around. So you'll always see them, but if you don't bother them, they don't bother you. People in São Paulo work all the time because it's just they don't have a lot of opportunities, and they take whatever jobs they can get. And everyone's trying to better their opportunities, so they'll go work during the day, they'll study at night, and they'll go to work early in the morning after that. It's not uncommon for people to have 2 jobs and go to school. It's a really hard situation. A lot of people work and jobs that in the United States aren't as typical. A lot of people are bus drivers because São Paulo has so many people. You need a lot of buses. So you have a lot of what they call motoristas. You have a lot of people who work in restaurants. You have a lot of people that clean houses. You have a lot of people who work as taxi drivers. You have a lot of government employees. Then you have, São Paulo is actually one of the richest, I think it is the richest city in Brazil, and so you have a lot of people that are really wealthy as well who work for a lot of major international corporations that are based out of São Paulo. And so it's hard to say what is a really typical job in São Paulo because it depends on the demographic. You'll work with the rich of the rich and the poor of the poor. What's also funny in Brazil is that anywhere you go, there will be like a little cafe, like a little place where you can stop and get a snack, because everyone will just cook and sell it on the street, and that's really bad for missionaries because you can gain a lot of weight really fast because it's relatively cheap and it's really good because Brazilian food is a lot better than American food. Maybe I'm biased, but it's really good, and so a lot of people do that. They'll be cooks. A lot of your ward members, the irmãs who will feed you, they're like professionals, and so your lunches are really high grade. And that's the other thing, in Brazil you don't have dinner, you have lunch with the members. And they will feed you until you physically cannot eat anymore. And so be prepared for that. They'll treat you really, really well. All major businesses that we know have a foothold in Sao Paulo as well. I'm trying to remember if there's any giant ones off the top of my head. I mean, a lot of big banks that are Brazilian, Bradesco or Banco do Brasil. There are some that in the United States aren't that big of a deal, like Tang. But in Brazil there are a ton of Tang flavors and they're really good, and they're a huge part of the culture because Brazilians love juice. So anytime you have a meal, you're gonna have juice with it. So that's a big deal. Sao Paulo is a great place for tourism. There's a lot of history, a lot of culture. Sao Paulo is one of the older cities, and so you can go to. They have this place that's kind of like Central Park. It's called Ibirapuera, and in Ibirapuera, I think it was voted the best park in the world, where you can just go into this huge Central Park and there are a ton of basketball courts, and you can rent bikes and skateboards and rollerblades. There's fountains, there's monuments. You can just go and relax, and it's really therapeutic for the missionaries. It's a great place to visit. Every missionary should get a chance to go there. There is a place called Avenida Paulista, which is like Times Square for Sao Paulo, where all the major industries and companies have their buildings, just tons of skyscrapers along this avenue. It's called Avenida Paulista, and you can go there. A lot of missionaries have to go there for their doctor's appointments and stuff, but you can go there for tourism. It's really cool. That's where they have some of the American stuff, so they run into like some McDonald's and some Burger Kings and Starbucks. Not that the missionaries would go there very often, but it's a tourist attraction, so that's worth going to. Another place is called 25 de Março, which is like, we don't want to say a black market, but it's where Brazil sells a lot of its cheaper goods, some knockoff brands. And you can go there, and the missionaries like to go there because you can get a lot of stuff for really cheap. And it's not good quality, but it's fun to go there and shop for the experience, because it's just unbelievable how big the shopping place is. Brazil does everything larger than life. They haven't quite figured out the happy medium. When they want to do something cool, it has to be enormous, and so that's kind of how it is. Another really cool thing about Brazil are the feiras, where it's like a farmer's market, but it happens every week, and it's anywhere you go, there'll be a feira, and you can just go, and they have every kind of fruit that you can imagine, and you go there and you talk to the guy about the price, and you're not going to barter with them because they have their prices set, but they'll cut the missionaries' deals a lot of the time. And you can go there and get fresh fruit, and it's great. It's a good way to keep your health up because missionaries need to eat well. And that's a cultural thing, because it's not like the United States where you go and buy your food in silence. Everyone's yelling, everyone's like, buy this, try this, it's really good, here's a great deal, hey, I'll cut you a deal. And it's a really human interaction. It's really nice. And then there are a lot of museums. The soccer museum is really cool. A lot of art museums, history of Brazil museums. It's a really cultural place, so there are a lot of places you can see.